Morning, morning. So we'll begin with something from the Sedra. Actually, I should begin, before we get to the Sedra, mentioning that today is Yud Kislev, 10th of Kislev, which is the Chag HaGeula, the festival of liberation of the Mittler Rebbe. Mittler Rebbe, the son of the Baal Tanya, and successor, second Rebbe of Chabad, was slandered and imprisoned. And on the 10th of Kislev, he was liberated. And it is understood that both the slander and the liberation are associated with the work of spreading teachings of the Baal Shem Tov in preparation for the coming of Mashiach. Even though the Alter Rebbe was already liberated on the 19th Kislev a generation earlier, but the Mittler Rebbe took the dissemination of Hasidus to another level. It's known that the Alter Rebbe is considered the Chachma of Hasidus Chabad, and the Mittler Rebbe the Bina. Remember, we learned in Tanya the difference between Chachma and Bina. Chachma is insight. It's the seminal point of where it all starts, and Bina is development, where it spreads to length, breadth, and depth. The word Bina comes from the word binyan, like a structure. Just doesn't just have the point, but also has a whole structure with length, width, and depth. So the teachings of the Mittler Rebbe take the Alter Rebbe's teachings and broaden them in an incredible way. The Alter Rebbe's teachings are compared to the Mayan, to the fountain. And the Mittler Rebbe's teachings are compared to the Nohar, to the river. Like the fountain is the source where it comes from, but the river, it spreads and develops into length, width, and depth. If you take, for example, the Alter Rebbe's Maimarim on Bereshis, printed in Torah Torah you have Maimarim on the entire Chumash Bereshis. Twice as well. In Torah you have the Maimarim on the entire Chumash Bereshis. Then you have Torah's Chaim from the Mittler Rebbe. It has Maimarim also on the whole Bereshis. Each Maimer of the Alter Rebbe that in Torah is one page. The same Maimer from the Mittler Rebbe in Torah's Chaim is 10 pages. The Mittler Rebbe takes the Chassidus of the Alter Rebbe and takes it to a new level, and develops it from Chachma to Bina. So even though the Mesiras Nefesh of the Alter Rebbe and everything that was experienced in the story of Yitzchak Kislev was sufficient to remove the kitruk, to remove the accusation that there was against prematurely revealing the secrets of Torah, as was done by the Alter Rebbe. But the Mittler Rebbe took it to another level. It brought about a new kitruk, and the battle of the Mesiras Nefesh all over again. And then Yud Kislev was the liberation of the Mittler Rebbe and enabled us to have access to Chassidus on this new level that the Mittler Rebbe developed. The question was whether the time is right to take such incredible, powerful secrets of Torah and disseminate them in a way that everybody should have access to them. The Satan wasn't very happy about it, because with such dissemination of Torah, you inspire Yidden to serve Hashem with joy and with enthusiasm, and it doesn't leave much of a chance to the opposition to be able to be able to keep people from doing that. So the Alter Rebbe had Mesiras Nefesh to publish the Tanya, 53 chapters of inspiration, bringing Yidden to serve Hashem with Ava B'Yireh, and sat prison 53 days, corresponding to the 53 pages of chapters of Tanya. And with his Mesiras Nefesh paid off, and the Schus for Rabbi, he was liberated on Yud Kislev and was given, as if it were, a green light to be able to disseminate the Chassidus without it. In a much greater way. After the experience of the imprisonment and liberation associated with Yud Kislev, the Alter Rebbe started teaching Chassidus in a much broader way than he was before. And the Mittler Rebbe took it to another level. So Yud Kislev and the Mittler Rebbe, his involvement in the study of Chassidus, teaching Chassidus, the dissemination of Chassidus was so intense that Tzemach Tzedek said about him, his son-in-law and successor, Tzemach Tzedek said about the Rebbe, that if you would cut his finger instead of blood, Chassidus would flow. If his finger was cut instead of blood, Chassidus would flow from his finger. That's how much he was permeated with Chassidus. In fact, when he was in prison, so there was a doctor that testified that he needs, for his health, he needs to teach Chassidus. It's absolutely vital for him. He's allowed to have a group of Chassidim come in every day, and he said to them, "My Chassidus," because the doctor said that he can't live it. Moving on to the Seder of the fact, mentioned in short that the Seder is connected both with Yud Kislev and Yutes Kislev. Alter Rebbe, after he came out of prison, published a letter that is printed in Tanya, second letter in the Geras HaPelah, beginning with the words from this week's Seder, I am humbled I'm diminished by all the kindness and all the truth that you have done with your servant. The words of Yaakov Avinu, when he was caring for his meeting with Esau, so he prayed to Hashem. He said, I am humbled, diminished by all the kindness that you've done for me. The makli of Arkeis Hayad, with my stick, I crossed the Jordan. Only with my staff and nothing else. Eliphaz came, she says, and took away everything. He left with absolutely nothing. Just with the staff, he crossed the Jordan. The Atta, now 20 years later, he used to Shnei Machnas, have 2 camps with family, with wealth, with possessions. So he's incredibly indebted to the Almighty, assuming that his merits have been used up. And therefore, who knows if he's worthy of being spared now, this encounter with Esau, praying to Hashem. So when one experiences chasadim and emes, one experiences Hashem's kindness, so it affects the person to be katayn, to be humbled and diminished. The question is why? So Rashi says, because the smatu is a chuyosai. Every time Hashem gives you kindness, count uses up some of your merits. Such kindness says probably all my merits were used up. And now I'm not sure if I'm worthy of being spared. The Alter Rebbe explains it, this letter of Kataynti, he explains it in a very beautiful way. It says, the Zohar says, Kula kamei lo Hashem. Everything before Hashem is totally insignificant. So if everything before Hashem is totally insignificant, then the closer you are to Hashem, the more insignificant you are. The closer you are, the more you feel the greatness of Hashem, the less you feel yourself, the less significant. So when Hashem does kindness to a person, Hashem saves a person, Hashem is showering on him his closeness. Hashem is embracing him and lifting him up. So the closer you are to Hashem, the more kataynti, the more you are diminished and humble, because everything before Hashem is insignificant. The more you are before Hashem, the closer you are to Hashem, the more insignificant you are. The more you should feel your own insignificance. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe calls to Hasidim after the events of Yutes Kislev, he was miraculously liberated. He calls to the Hasidim to respond with humility, not to go out to the opponents and say, aha, see, we won, you failed in your plans, and we won. But rather to be humble and to show kindness and compassion. And perhaps this will cause that the opponents will also be softened by this and reciprocate also with kindness and compassion. But the idea of kataynti is that the more one experiences Hashem's kindness, the more one should feel humbled and insignificant before Hashem. The closer you are to the greatness of Hashem, the more you should feel your own insignificance. Move on to, start, yes. Yeah. It depends how you see it. If you focus on yourself and say, wow, look at me, I have all these things now. So I'm a big machem. But if you focus on the fact that you're indebted to Hashem for giving his kindness, you don't take credit for yourself. You take it, you feel indebted to Hashem. But then the more kindness you experience, the more humbled you are by it. So it really depends on whether you're focused on the giver or you're focused on the taker. The famous parking place story. A man had an appointment, and he came to the place for the appointment that he couldn't find a parking place to save his life. Late for the appointment. He said, God, please help me get a parking space. I beg you, I pray to you, please. I'll do everything you want. Just give me a parking space. And he's going around the block looking for a parking space. And then suddenly, third time around the block, he comes to exactly the building where he has the appointment. And right in front of him, a car pulls out. He says, okay, God, I don't need you anymore. I have a space. So it all depends on how you respond to it. If you think that the kindness is coming to you from Hashem, then you're humbled by it. Think that the kindness is your own achievements, then you become more full of yourself and less aware of Hashem's kindness. Oh, no. So good point. It's discussed in the Mefarshim. There are various opinions as to what way Yaakov dealt with it as 100% correct. That there's room for uh, some minor criticism and some minor improvements. There's various discussions in the Parshas and the Gus and the body. It's not so simple. But the Yaakov's perspective, his humility came from the fact that he felt so showered with Hashem's kindness. The closer you are to Hashem, the more humble you are. Anyway, to move on a little further in the parsha, we have a pasuk Vateitze Dina bas Leah, Lidos b'vnei Sa'aretz. The Dina, the daughter of Leah, Sheyolda Yaakov, Leah born to Yaakov, went out to see the daughters of the land. Yeah, that's the beginning, right after Hamishi. That's the way the pasuk begins. So Rashi says, why does it say Bas Leah, the daughter of Leah who Leah bore to Yaakov? After all, she was the daughter of Yaakov. It should say Vateitze Dina Bas Yaakov, right? So why does it say Bas Leah? Rashi says Bas Leah v'lei Bas Yaakov, not the daughter of Yaakov. El Hashem Yitziyasa Mikras Bas Leah. Because of her tendency to go out, she's called the daughter of Leah. Because Leah also had this tendency to go out. As it says in last week's Sedra, Leah went out to greet Yaakov. And then it says in brackets, because obviously it's in some of the manuscripts of Rashi it was found, and some of the manuscripts of Rashi it's not found. So it's questionable whether this actually comes from Rashi or not. But it says Ve'aleha mashlu hamashal, in reference to her. The proverb is used, Ki ima kibita, like mother, like daughter. So superficially reading this Rashi, we assume that Rashi is being is critical of Dina and critical of Leah. That Dina had no business going out, and where did she get this tendency to go out from? She got it from Leah. She was also Yatom. That's the way it seems when you read the Rashi. However, there are a number of questions that come up with it. First of all, why does Rashi choose to interpret this pasuk in a derogatory way about Leah? After all, the Torah doesn't speak in a derogatory way even about an unclean animal. Remember, Parshas Leah, when the Torah spoke about the unclean animals, it said, the one that is not tahira. It didn't say the one that is tamah. Because the Torah tries to avoid speaking in a derogatory way even about an animal. How much more so about a human being? How much more so about a yid? How much more so about one of the imois hakdoshos, like Leah? Why would the Torah want to speak in a derogatory way about Leah? And if you want to tell me that have to speak this way because that's the only way to defend Dina. And Dina's tendency to go out was not her fault; she inherited it from Leah. So, what do you achieve with defending one person's misdeeds by bringing in somebody else? Besides that, Rashi already taught us in Parshas Noach, and it says, "Ela told this Noach ish tzaddik." The words Noach ish tzaddik don't fit into the sequence of events over there. Ela told this Noach. These are the descendants of Noach. Why say suddenly Noach ish tzaddik? So Rashi says, "Zecher tzaddik." When you mention a tzaddik, libracha, you say a blessing, say something good about him. So when it mentions Noach, it says Noach ish tzaddik. Noach was a righteous man. So we know that when you mention a tzaddik, you say something nice about him. Here, the pasuk mentions Leah. How does Rashi interpret the mention of Leah in a derogatory way? It doesn't seem to fit the bill. Doesn't seem to fit the practice of Zecher tzaddik livracha. When you mention a tzaddik, it should be for blessing. So you might say Rashi had no choice because the pasuk says Vateitze Dina bas Leah asher yolda leYaakov. It's a peculiar way of speaking. So surely the Torah is trying to tell us something over here. But what's the Torah trying to tell us? The only way that you can explain it is it's trying to tell you that Leah had a certain weakness, a certain And that weakness was passed on to Dinah, and therefore the Torah mentions over here that she was Dinah Bas Leah. However, I had a much better idea for Rashi, how we could have explained it in a way that would have been beautiful. We learned in last week's study that why was Dinah called Dinah? Because Donna Leah Din Ba'at. When Leah was expecting with Dinah, she did some calculations. She said to herself, if this pregnancy will turn out to be a boy, then I will have 7 sons, 7 shvatim. The shvachos, the maidservants, Bilhah and Zilpah, each had 2. And Leah knew Beruach HaKodesh that Yaakov is only destined to have 12 shvatim. So if I'm going to have 7, and Bilhah and Zilpah are going to have 2 each, that's going to come to a total of 11. So what will be left for Rachel? Only 1. It'll be less than even the maidservant. So Leah didn't want that Rachel should be in any way left out, embarrassed. So she prayed that the pregnancy should turn out to be a girl, so it shouldn't be another Shevet, so that Rachel should have 2 Shvat. That's why she's called Dinah, because Donna Leah Din Ba'atzma. Leah made this calculation, and she prayed that it should be a girl. So if that's the case, that Dinah only turned out to be Dinah because of Leah's prayers, so what's the surprise that it says about Teitze Dinah Bas Leah Sheyolda Le'Yaakov? She was Dinah and not a boy because of Leah, because Leah prayed for that she should be a girl. So the association of Dinah to Leah is very strong, and it would be a big compliment to Leah. That Leah, even though we learned previously that she was Mis'ava, she wanted to have more Shvatim and Sachar and Zvulim, but nevertheless, when it came to Rachel's covet, she davened that it should be a girl. So that's a compliment to Leah. But why does Rashi choose to explain this pasuk in a derogatory way about Leah if there's an option to explain it in a very beautiful way about Leah? Another question. What did Leah do wrong? The pasuk says, "Vateitzei Leah l'krasa." Leah went out to greet him. Who did she go out to greet? She went out to greet Yaakov. She went out to greet Yaakov in order that she be more shvatim. And she clearly says that Hashem was with her. So it's a wonderful thing that she did. So why are we saying that Dinah did the wrong thing? And you know where she got it from? From Leah, who also did the wrong thing. Leah didn't do anything wrong. That Tate say Leah l'krasa. She went out to greet Yaakov. So perhaps it makes us think that if Leah didn't do anything wrong, maybe Dinah didn't do anything wrong either. Maybe the comparison of Dinah to Leah is not a criticism, not in a derogatory way at all. Maybe it's actually a very complimentary comparison. How could that be? So in order to understand this, we have to ask ourselves, what do we know about Dinah? Dinah is a person who, in Chumash, superficially, we don't find much about Dinah. So do we know anything about her? So actually, in this week's Seder, there's a phenomenal story about Dinah. Gets swept under the carpet. It says that Yaakov went to meet with Esau, and he set out his family, because he took his wives and his maidservants. That's Achad Osor Yoloda, that is 11 sons. Yeah, just before he crossed the Yabok River. It says over there that he took his 11 sons. And it doesn't mention anything about any daughters. So Rashi right away picks up on this. Rashi says, with Dinah, Heichan Haisa. Where was Dinah? We know that he had a daughter, Dinah. He has wives, he has maidservants, and he has 11 sons. Where was Dinah? Rashi says she was in a box. Yaakov placed her in a box. And he didn't want Esau to place his eyes on her. So to protect Dinah, Yaakov put her in a box. Therefore, she's not mentioned. And Rashi says, and Yaakov was punished for this. Why was he punished for this? Because had Esau has placed his eyes on Dinah and asked to marry her, it's very likely that she would have turned him around. She would have brought him around. She would have changed Esau. And can imagine what would have happened if Esau would have been brought around. It would have changed the history of the world. And Yaakov prevented that by putting Dinah in a box. Therefore, he was punished, that Dinah fell in the hands of Shem. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay, good point. We'll get to that in a moment. Okay? So now the question is, first of all, do you expect Yaakov to be mafkir his daughter? Yaakov should be punished for that. And he did what every father would do, protecting his daughter. Besides that, if you look at the story over there, it's mind-boggling. Esav was brought up in the home of Yitzchak and Rivka. Yitzchak and Rivka must have done everything they could to try and influence him. And it didn't work. He ended up being Esav and Russia. Who is Dinah? Dinah is a young girl. And we're saying that had Dinah married Yaakov and married Esav, she would have turned him around. What does that tell you about Dinah? It means that Dinah seems to be an extremely charismatic individual, extremely passionate, to the point that she had the power to achieve what nobody else can achieve. It's amazing. And when we say Shema Tachziranu Lamutav, maybe she would have brought him around. That's what Yaakov could have thought, maybe she would bring him around. But it seems that from the Eibishter's perspective, she surely would have brought him around. And therefore, Yaakov was punished for not allowing that to happen. So Dinah is something incredible. So now, Dinah arrives with her family in a new city, Shechem. Comes to Shechem, and she knows that the people of Shechem are idol worshippers. And she knows that her grandparents, Avram and Sarah, even when they were in Haran, before they came to Eretz Yisrael, were engaged in teaching people about monotheism. Avram Magayeres HaAnashim, Sarah Magayeres HaAnashim. Right? Avram influenced the men to forsake idol worship and serve Hashem. And Sarah influenced the women to forsake idol worship and serve Hashem. So Dinah arrives in a new town. First thing she wants to do is, she's this very charismatic, very passionate young woman. The first thing she wants to do is go out and meet the daughters of the land and speak to them and knock some sense into their head and teach them about one God. They should forsake their idol worship and serve one God. Why did the events with Shem take place? That Rashi already told us. The punishment for Yaakov for preventing her from holding her back from Esav. Now, what does this have to do with Leah? Why do we say Dinah Bas Leah? So we know that although Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are all called the Avos of Klal, so we descend from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. We all have within us energies and the empowerment from Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Nevertheless, there's a special connection with Yaakov. Yaakov is the father of Klal Yisrael. We are called Klal Yisrael, Am Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael. Yisrael is Yaakov. And it says that Yaakov's neshama included the neshamas of all you, similar to other men. Different, the Yaakov names that they love. So Yaakov has a special connection with every single. But that is in general. More specifically, Yidden are divided into 12 different tribes, 12 different paths in the service of Hashem, depending on which shape it is. Now, although there's 12 different paths in Hashem, generally speaking, it's divided into two groups: Bnei Rachel and Bnei Leah. The sons of Rachel and the sons of Leah. What's the difference between the sons of Rachel and their service of Hashem, the sons of Leah and their service of Hashem? So we know that the Beis Hamikdash was built on the border between the territory of Binyamin and the territory of Yehuda. The Mizbeach, the altar, had to be in the territory of Binyamin. Pasuk says in Parshas Vayishlach, Binyamin ze'ev yitrach. Binyamin is like a wolf of prey. So just like a wolf preys on animals, domesticated animals. So the Mizbeach consumes the sacrifice. So the Mizbeach is called the wolf, and Binyamin ze'ev yitrach. The Mizbeach has to be in the territory of Binyamin. To the extent that if you look at a diagram of the Mizbeach, Mizbeach had 3 levels. And as it went higher, it got narrower. Went lower, it got wider. So the widest and lowest section of the Mizbeach is called the Yesod. And the Yesod is cut out on 2 sides, missing an Amma on 2 sides, because that Amma went into the territory of the Hizb. And the whole Mizbeach had to be in the territory of the Hizb. What would be so terrible if a little bit of the Mizbeach went into the territory of the Hizb? So the Zohar says the Yamin was a tzad. And the Mizbeach had to be in the territory of the tzad. What about Yehuda? Yehuda was great as well. Yehuda was the king of the tribes. Yehuda participated in the sale of Yosef. Since Yehuda participated in the sale of Yosef, that disqualified him from having the Mizbeach in this territory. But the question is, but didn't the Shvatim do tshuva? It says when they stood in front of Yosef, when Yosef was suspecting them of being spies and hassling them, they said, "Abel Hashemim anachnu alachinu, we're guilty about our brother. We should have listened to. We heard his pleas and his cries, and we didn't pay attention to him. And this is why all this is happening to us." So they admitted that they did something wrong, and they wanted to do. They did tshuva. So if they did tshuva, that should sort it. Why couldn't the Mizbeach be in the territory? So the answer is that did tshuva, they became Baalei tshuva. But they still didn't have that strength that Binyamin had, that he was a tzaddik all along. And the Mizbeach needed to be in the territory of someone who was a tzaddik all along. Probably noticed that the Shvatim that we refer to as Hatzadik are Yosef Hatzadik and Binyamin Hatzadik. So Yosef and Binyamin, the Bnei Rachel, they were tzaddik. The Bnei Leah were Baalei tshuva. Baalei tshuva doesn't only mean someone who sinned and repented, it also means the general avodah of reaching out to the world of darkness and impurity and mundanity and transforming it into light and holiness. Where did they get this characteristic from? The Bnei Rachel tzaddikim and the Bnei Leah Baalei tshuva. So no, everything came from Yaakov, but it came through the imahos, Rachel and Leah. Rachel had more a tendency towards being a tzaddik, and Leah had more a tendency towards being a Baalei. Where do we see that? We see it last week said. It says the first encounter, Yaakov meets Rachel first time. So it says Lavan shtei banos. Lavan had 2 daughters. Shem Hagdela Leah, Shem Hakana. So the older daughter was Leah, and the younger one was Rachel. The Leah Rakos. Leah's eyes were tender. It actually says tender from crying. The Rachel Hoisa Yefas Tayar V'Yefas Madam. Rachel was Yefas Tayar V'Yefas. What is Yefas Tayar V'Yefas Madam? It says Yefas Tayar is that her limbs were in the right proportion. Yefas Madam means that in her face the right color, the right complexion. So what does that mean? The limbs, the 248 limbs in the body correspond to 248 mitzvahs. The color and the complexion of the face has to do with the blood circulation, which comes through the veins. The 365 sinews or veins, blood vessels, correspond to the 365 negatives. So when we say that Rachel was Yefas Tayar, Yefas Mara, it means she was perfect in the 248 positive, and perfect and complete in the 365 negative. So Rachel was the ultimate tzaddik. Her beauty was in her righteousness. Leah, her eyes were tender from crying. Crying is the avodah of a Baalei tshuva. So Leah had more the tendency of Baalei tshuva, and Rachel had more the tendency of tzaddik. Which is why Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Eholim. Remember we discussed in a previous year about Yaakov and Esau. How Yaakov is the Chassid Hama'ula, the one who just strives to go higher and higher in spirituality, doesn't that much engage with the outside world. So when Yaakov saw Rachel, Vayehav Yaakov as Rachel. Yaakov loved Rachel because she was right up his alley. Yaakov was Ishtam Yeshiv Eholim, and Rachel was Yefas Tayar V'Yefas Mara, perfect in this places. Everything was perfect. Now this also explains a very puzzling Maimon Chazal. We all know the Maimon Chazal. Rashi tells us that everyone said, all the Shatchanim across the land agreed on this. that Yitzchak has two sons, Rivka has two sons, excuse me, Lavan has two daughters. So Hagdayla legadol v'Haktana lekatana. The older daughter should marry the older son, and the younger daughter should marry the younger son. Now, is this the way Shatchanim work? You have two sons, you have two daughters, chick, chack, done. Find out something about the person, find out about their personality, find out about their preferences, right? Not just throw it like that, bang, bang, bang. The answer is, it's very simple. Leah had the ability to connect with the outside world and transform it into holiness. Rachel was more focused on Kedusha, living within Kedusha and growing within. So looking at Esav and Yaakov, anybody would have said, perfect shidduch. Leah should marry Esav, because she has this incredible power to take the unholy and make it holy, to take the dark and make it light. And she would be perfect for Esav, but she could turn him around. And Rachel would be perfect for Yaakov. So the character of Baal Tshuva, being able to take the darkness of the world and transform it into light, came to the Bnei Leah through Leah. It was her character. So now Dinah, Bas Leah, is the daughter of Leah. Says Rashi, Bas Leah, but Leah Bas Yaakov. This character trait that Dinah had, that she wanted liras with Loisa, that she wanted to go out and see the daughters of the land and try to influence them to get involved in serving one God and give up their idolatry, this she inherited from Leah. Leah had this tendency, but Leah Bas Yaakov, this is not Yaakov's way. Yaakov's way was to lock her up in a box. She shouldn't have a connection with the outside. But from Leah, she got this tendency to go out. So it brings in what you mentioned as well. There's one question left. That is, were Dinah's efforts successful by any stretch of the imagination? And the whole thing turned into a catastrophe. But Tzadekis, like Dinah, meant well. She tried to do the right thing. So did she achieve anything positive? So the first glance answer is, at the end of the day, all the people of Shem were circumcised. And circumcision meant joining with the family of Abraham, which automatically meant accepting monotheism. So at some level, she was successful in bringing about the entire population of Shem accepting monotheism. But take it a step further. I mean, the men of Shem at the end of the day were killed. Nothing really came out of that. But there's another pasuk which we seem to ignore for some reason. I don't know why. What happened to the women of Shem? Anybody know what happened to the women of Shem? Anybody follow it up? So it's actually an explicit pasuk. It says, "That's kol chelam," all their wealth. That's Taplam and their children. That's Nesheim and their wives. Shavu v'ayavazu, they took captive. Shimon and Levi, when they massacred the city of Shem, they took their wealth, their children, and their wives captive. So where did they end up? They must have ended up being maidservants in the homes of the sons of Yaakov. So if they ended up being maidservants in the homes of the sons of Yaakov, then surely they took on the religion of the sons of Yaakov, which is serving one God. So as a result of Dinah's efforts, all the women of Shem, who she was after, ended up coming over to serving one God. That wasn't the plan of how she was planning to achieve it. But her efforts clearly didn't go to waste. For being That's true. That's true. But he didn't choose that. He didn't choose that. That in the circumstances that he was in. The question was that Yosef was in the house of Potiphar and he was in Mitzrayim. He engaged with the darkness quite a bit, but he didn't choose to be there. This derech that Dinah had, Liras with Lois Haaretz, that came from Leah, because Leah had the tendency she was a yatzonis. She had it within her to have an interaction with the outside world and turn it over to God. And Dinah took that a step further and actually implemented the action, went out with Lois Haaretz. So again, he had to do it, but that wasn't his natural tendency. Yaakov had it his way, he would have stayed in Yeshiva Shem Be'evet. He was sent. Shkocha Pratis sent him into a situation, so he was so holy that even in that situation he was able to maintain his holiness. And he was able to have great success, even more than he did before. But that was a situation that was forced upon him. That wasn't his tendency. So exactly the same answer I'm asking when he answered about Yosef. Yosef's situation was forced upon him. And he acted accordingly. He did the right thing. I mean, under the circumstance. But to have that tchuna, that characteristic of being a yatzonis, that is her tchuna, that she has the tendency to have that special, she knew that she had that special chush to go out into the outside world and transform it. That is a special tchuna that Leah had and Dinah inherited from Leah. Well, generally, tshuva is associated with realizing that the world of being far from Hashem is a terrible situation. And therefore, there's a sense of remorse and a sense of bitterness about being so far. Therefore, it turns into a yearning to come close. Tshuva is associated with being upset about the distance from Hashem, right? That's why about tshuva can go higher than a tzaddik, because it's the realizing how far he is gives him this push to be able to reach even higher up. So there is that aspect in tshuva. Now, just to conclude about this point, there's a hira, there's a lesson to be learned. Everything else to take. Even though kol kvuda bas melech pnima, obviously the most honorable place for a princess is inside, and tznius is a very, very important aspect of a Jewish woman. At the same time, Jewish women were blessed with a special charisma and a special warmth and a special passion, and there are certain individuals that have an extra measure of it. And it can be used, and therefore should be used, and must be used, to reach out to other Jewish women and to share with them, of course, within the realms of tznius, without compromising any business, to share with them the beauty of Yiddishkeit, and to inspire them and to bring them closer to Yiddishkeit, to help them find a way to their true heritage. So we can learn that from the story of Dinah, which, according to this interpretation of Rashi, is the Torah sees as something complementary. When the Hashgacha Pratis drives a person in a certain direction, and whether it is something they're comfortable with or not something they're comfortable with, they have to take the cue from the Hashgacha Pratis and act accordingly in that situation. That doesn't mean that that's their tendency. It means sometimes you're able to affect of a person to behave in a way which is not according to his tendency. Yeah. Okay, that's another topic. There's a whole discussion about whether when Yosef caused the whole Egypt to circumcise himself, to be able to be fed, there's opinions that he did the right thing, opinions he did the wrong thing. It's not simple. Okay. Yes. Bilhah and Zilpah, yeah. Rachel and Leah, together with Bilhah and Zilpah. Rachel took responsibility for Bilhah's children, and Leah took responsibility for Zilpah's. That's correct. Yes, we do find that when it came to building the Mishkan, so the two people that were put in charge of the Mishkan were Betzalel, was from the tribe of Yehuda, and what's his name? I'm talking about Eliah ben Achisama, Lamatei Dan. So it was one person from the tribe of Yehuda and one person from the tribe of Dan. As I'll point out that Dan was from the Vayishlach, was from the children of Nathan. Yehuda was king of the tribe, and they were in the building of the Mishkan. Everybody participated, from the top to the bottom. So there was some extra respect that went to the Yehuda, king of the Shvatim, as opposed to the sons of the Meitzah. But nevertheless, they were one family. What you said about bringing up is Rachel passed away because they came to Eretz Yisrael. So Bilhah raised Rachel's children. Okay, we're going to move on to Tanya. So we were just beginning the approbations, I believe. Right? The two approbations of Reb Zusha and Reb Yehuda Leib. They are on page 4 in the Hebrew, numbers on top of the page. And in the Roman numerals, it would be page 14. You have a Tanya like mine. Yeah, XIV. In the English, it's if you have the same pages that I do, it's 14 in the Roman numeral. Number 4 on numbers on top of the page. Okay, so we mentioned that the Alter Rebbe agreed to publish the Tanya on condition that it would have an approbation from two great tzaddikim, Reb Zusha of Anapoli and Rabbi Leib HaKohen. Therefore, he sent 3 Hasidim with the manuscripts of the Tanya to the town of Anapoli to show the manuscripts to these two tzaddikim and ask them to write a haskama, an approbation on the Tanya. It is there's a number of anecdotes told about this encounter. One is that Reb Zusha, when he received the manuscript, was not aware of the fact that another copy was brought to Rabbi Yehuda Leib. Rabbi Yehuda Leib, when he received the manuscripts, was not aware that another copy was brought to Reb Zusha. So each one, looking at the manuscripts, thought to themselves, "This is something I must share with my chaver, Reb Zusha with Rabbi Yehuda Leib, Rabbi Yehuda Leib with Reb Zusha." So their initial reaction was to run quickly in the direction of their colleague's house and share it with them. And they both met by the bridge. Middle of Anapoli, there's a stream or a river and there's a bridge. They both met by the bridge, and the expression is as ganz Anapoli had gebrennt. The entire Anapoli was burning with excitement. Excitement that Reb Zusha was showing to the Leib, and the Leib was showing to Reb Zusha. Look what we have over here. Then there's another anecdote, which is alluded to in the Haskamas, that what their initial reaction was. So Reb Zusha's initial reaction when he saw the manuscripts of the Tanya was that with this Sefer, Yidden will go to greet Mashiach. And we'll see at the end of his Haskama how he alludes to that in his Haskama. Rabbi Leib HaKohen, when he saw the manuscripts, his initial reaction was that this Sefer will be the Ketores against all the Magefes Ruchnius of Ikvus. Ketores means the incense, like the Besamikdash would brought incense. And the incense, we know from Chumash, stops plagues. So he said that the spiritual plagues that will be at the very end of Golus, just before the coming of Mashiach, Tanya will be like the Ketores that will be able to stop those plagues. And he alluded to it also in his Haskamas. See. So if we read the right column So this is a probation from the pious, well-known godly man described as holy. I saw the writings of this great genius, this godly man, Kadosh V'Tor, holy and pure, an illuminating magnifying glass. The toiv asher asa, and the good that he has done, asher hifli Hashem chazdei, that Hashem has done wondrous kindness. The nasan b'libay hator, and placed in his pure heart, lasis is kol eila, to do all this incredible work. The hares am Hashem d'rachav ha'kdeshim, to show Hashem's nation his holy ways. The initial will of this author was initially his will was not to bring these writings, these manuscripts. It's not his way. As I mentioned in the previous year, it wasn't the way of the Baal Shem Tov or the Magid. The Alter Rebbe also didn't want to publish. Because these pamphlets were spread amongst all of Israel. Many copies by various scribes or even strange scribes. We pointed out, I think last year we spoke about the fact that there were intentional falsifications of the manuscripts. Yeah, we spoke about that last week. Means haskama, an agreement, giving your agreement to publish it. Okay, so I think I spoke about last week about the three Siddim of Alter Rebbe that traveled to Leipzig and found over there so there were intentional forgings of the manuscripts of the Tanya to discredit the Alter Rebbe, and this was one of the things that, as if it were, forced the Alter Rebbe to agree to print it. So there should be a standard edition which is correct, and anything that's different from this is incorrect. So he alludes to this by using the word Seifrim Meshunim. Meshunim doesn't just mean various; it also means it's strange, out of the ordinary. The Machmas Riboy Hataka Shem is because there were so many different copies. It became a lot of mistakes, unintentional mistakes and intentional mistakes. Of course, it became absolutely necessary to bring these notebooks and manuscripts to print. So the Almighty aroused the spirit of the partners. That's the father of the Tzemach Tzedek, the son-in-law of the Alter Rebbe, the son of the Leah. He was one of the young men who took on this project. As well as another chassid called the Martha, the son of Shmuel HaLevi. These two gentlemen took it on, the Slavita, to bring these notebooks, these manuscripts, to the printing house in Slavita. For the good work, says Reb Zusha, I give a Yashar Koyach. However, these publishers who invested time and money in the publishing of the time had a concern. And that concern was from the prints, there are many prints, this is the old story of the copyright problem. You invest time and money into publishing a book, and then somebody can come along the next day and reprint it for next to nothing and undercut you. You can never make back your investment. So this is where the whole concept of copyright comes in. That there are laws that prevent printing somebody else's work without their permission. So this is what Reb Zusha over here is saying, that the publishers are concerned about the issues of copyright. Because there are many prints that would undercut and ruin good work. Therefore, Rabbi Leib and I, we both concluded to give our approbation. No one should dare lift a hand or a foot to cause these publishers any damage, God forbid, or any illegal competition under any circumstance. It's forbidden for anyone to publish this book without the knowledge of these publishers. Course of 5 consecutive years from the date below, It should be forbidden for anyone to publish this book without the permission of the publisher. And the Rebbe explains that this prohibition of not being able to publish it for 5 years doesn't only apply 5 years after the initial publication, but whenever the Tanya is printed with permission, then from 5 years from then, it's forbidden to print it without permission. And since the Tanya is continuously being reprinted, so this continues to be effective. And this is actually why the various contracts about how the rights were sold from one publisher to another are printed in the Tanya, because this is very important to know who has the right and who doesn't have the right to print the Tanya. And when people printed the Tanya without permission, the Rebbe was very, very unhappy about it and expressed it quite clearly. And this is the reason, but when the Tanya is printed in every place, it can only be printed with specific permission from head office, and the title page with the name of the place where it's printed is all preset in the head office of Kahas and sent, so that everything should be exactly as it's meant to be. When anybody tried to tamper with that, the Rebbe was very unhappy about it. Rest right too. One who will hearken to my words, will come upon him all blessings of good. This is the words of one who speaks this for the honor of Torah. Today is the third day of the week in which Ki Tov is mentioned twice. We know that in all of creation it says every day, Hashem saw that it was good. And on the third day of creation it says twice Ki Tov. So Hayom Gimel Shuchla by Ki Tov, Nichla by Ki Tov, Parshas Tavai, portion of Tavai. Why does he mention the portion of the Torah portion of the week? How does that come in? What does it have to do with the price of cheeses and say? So the answer is that one of the points that Abzusha wanted to, and the Lev as well, we'll see, wanted to communicate, is that Hisavai, when you will come into the land, like Hisavai al Ha'aretz talks about entering into the land. And we know that Eretz Yisrael is not just a geographical location. Eretz Yisrael is a holy place. It's a godly place. The word Chazal saying, Lama Nikra Shema Eretz, why is it called Eretz? Because it runs and desires to do the will, enthusiastically desires to do the will of its maker. And Yisrael is Yesh Shishim Riba Yaisi Latera. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. Eretz Yisrael, in essence, is the idea of a passionate desire to lead one's life in accordance with the Torah. So when we speak about entering Eretz Yisrael, there's entering Eretz Yisrael in the geographical sense, and there's entering Eretz Yisrael in the spiritual sense. And so the Bzusha and the Yehuda Leib both alluded to in their Haskama to the Tanya that this is a sefer that will assist you on Bias Haaretz, on arriving in Eretz Yisrael. Because to arrive at Eretz Yisrael, understanding Eretz Yisrael in a spiritual sense, that it means a life that is permeated with enthusiasm to fulfill, to live according to Hashem's will. So the way to go about it is by the studying of the Sefer every time. Therefore, they both wrote into their Haskama, Parshas Tavai. This is Parshas Tavai El Haaretz, because this is the Sefer that will help you achieve true arrival in Eretz Yisrael. This idea that Eretz Yisrael is not only a geographical place, but also has a deeper meaning, it also has a deeper significance, and is actually based on a Gemara. Gemara says that the Yochanan asked, Ikis Sava Babavel, are there old people in Babel? Yochanan lived in Eretz Yisrael, and a large Jewish community then in Babel. The Yochanan asked, are there old people in the community in Babel? So he was told, yes, there are. He said, I'm very surprised. We say every day in the Shema, that your days will be better, the days of your children. On the land that Hashem has sworn to your forefathers. So it makes sense for people to have longevity in the land that Hashem has sworn to your forefathers. So, but in Babel, people have longevity. How does that work? It goes against the pasuk. So the Gemara says that when he found out that the people in Babel go early in the morning to shul and stay late into the Beis Medrash and stay late at night in the Beis Medrash, and then he was satisfied. So the question is, how did that satisfy him? The pasuk says, upon the land. Why does it help me that you go early in the morning to the Beis Medrash and you stay late at night in the Beis Medrash? Not on the land. So the Marsha talks about this. The Marsha says that we see from here that a Beis HaMedrash, a Beis HaKnesset, a place of Torah study, is extraterritorial Eretz Yisrael. Wherever it is, it's extraterritorial Eretz Yisrael. Like the idea of, let's say, in London, there's a French embassy. In France, in Paris, there's a British embassy. So geographically, the British embassy in France is part of France. But the laws of England apply there. The French embassy in London is geographically part of England. But legally, it's extraterritorial France. So if you have a place of Torah study, a place of prayer, a place of mitzvahs, in Chutz La'aretz, it's extraterritorial Eretz Yisrael. So to enter into Eretz Yisrael, there's a famous story about the Chassid who came to Tzemach Tzedek and he said that he wants to move to Eretz Yisrael. And Tzemach Tzedek told him that your mission is to take the place where you live right now and turn it into Eretz Yisrael. Machda Eretz Yisrael. You have to take this place and turn it into Eretz Yisrael. I tell a story about the Rebbe Marash, a sharp story. I'm not sure what the story is. It's a pretty good story. Rebbe Marash was a very young man. Passed away at 48 years. Very young man. An older chassid once came to see him. He said that I want to move to Eretz Yisrael. So he said, why do you want to move to Eretz Yisrael? He said, because I understand in the Gemara it says that people who pass away in Chutz La'aretz, buried in Chutz La'aretz, time of Tchias HaMesim, because HaMesim will be only in Eretz Yisrael. The time of Tchias HaMesim, they'll have to roll through the tunnels to Eretz Yisrael, and I don't want to do that. So I want to move now to Eretz Yisrael. I'm an old man. I can pass away in Eretz Yisrael, and I'll be buried in Eretz Yisrael, and I'll get up at Tchias HaMesim. I'll have a front seat right away. So the Rebbe Marash said to him, it's a valid point. However, I have a question for you. Why are you only worried about yourself? Why aren't you worried about me? After all, you're my chassid, you're Rebbe. Surely you're concerned about me as well. Then why are you only worried about yourself? So the chassid said, the Rebbe, I'm not worried about the Rebbe. The Rebbe is a tzaddik. Wherever the Rebbe will be, a malach will come and lift him up, bring him to Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe Marash said to him, you're right. And you're forgetting one thing. Before the malach comes to Russia, pick me up and take me to Eretz Yisrael, he's first going to come to Eretz Yisrael and pick you up and bring you back to Russia so you can go through you can roll through the tunnels. In other words, the point is that it's not a game. You get on an El Al flight and you land in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael is a holy state of being. It's a holy place and it's a holy state of being. If you live your life, a life of holiness, then wherever you are, you turn that place into Eretz Yisrael. Then the Malach will pick you up and bring you to Eretz Yisrael. But if you bring Chutz La'aretz into Eretz Yisrael, you're not living your life in a holy way. Bring that into Eretz Yisrael. You're only bringing Chutz La'aretz into Eretz Yisrael. You're not coming into Eretz Yisrael. You're bringing your unholiness into a holy place. That's actually counterproductive. So Reb Zusha in his Haskama points out that Parshas Tavai, that the study of this Sefer Tanya is the means how to achieve the enter into Eretz Yisrael in a spiritual sense. Then he says, after he says the date, the third day of the week, Parshas Tavai, then he says, Shnas Peduseinu L'Fat, the year of Peduseinu. Peduseinu means literally our deliverance. Peduseinu, Pedus is deliverance. Seinu, our deliverance. And the gematria of Peduseinu is 556, because that was the year of 5,556. However, the reason he uses the word Peduseinu, our deliverance, is to allude to his initial reaction when he saw these manuscripts. That this is the way, this is the sefer with which Yidden are going to greet Mashiach. At the time of our deliverance, when Mashiach comes, with this sefer, Yidden will go to greet Mashiach. And therefore, he alludes to it by writing the date, Shnas Peduseinu, and signs Hakatan Mishal and Zuslameh. So this is the approbation, the Haskama from Zusha Anach. And in the left column, Yirtzeh Hashem, we'll learn the Haskama from Rabbi Yudalev HaKoyin in the left column, and we'll see how he also alludes to his initial reaction that Tanya is the greatest against the Magefis Ruchnius, the spiritual plagues of Ikvus and Mashiach. He also alludes to it in his Haskama. A lot of other fascinating things in Haskama of Rabbi Yudalev HaKoyin. You might notice that there's different fonts here, there's Rashi letters, square letters. That's a whole cheshbon, which words are written with Rashi letters and which words are written with square letters. Watch this space, and Yirtzeh Hashem, we'll either next week. Yes, of course. I caught them. right. Very much connected with this week's Parsha. Tanya. Very good point. Okay. Just to mention that there is this Kislev, there's a big event being planned next Parshas Shabbos, the Inspire conference taking place in Kinlos. Probably people know about it, and there's a way of registering for it online. So if you want to find out about it, I'm sure that people are more than happy to help you. Sorry? You want to speak about having weeks off during the... I will go with whatever you decide. People are away, they're work for them. So. Okay, so there will be a shiur next week in Mirza Hashem, and then for 2 weeks we'll have a Hanukkah break, and then we will continue in Mirza Hashem after that. I'll go with what the people that are they come to the shiur. What's for that? Hey, anyone has objections to that? They should speak to Mrs. Harms and work it out.